What is going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about Opendoor. I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause some volatility in the stock price, and go over everything else that you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So this past week for Opendoor, it's been pretty positive. It did go up about 8.4%, whereas much of the greater market just went down. So Opendoor, I think all in all, did do fairly well. But this upcoming week is going to be the deciding point, whether it does break above that 50-day moving average or retest that 200. So it is going to be a lot of volatility. Getting right to some of the data points though, on Monday we have manufacturing. Current forecast is 51.3, previous was 52.6, which is rather odd because it does signal that there's a certain amount of contraction anticipated. But if we look at a lot of the previous manufacturing data points, everything's been home run. So very odd to see this being kind of on the downside, but if we do exceed expectations, what much greater than the 51.3, then in theory we should be really moving higher because the market's actually taking data for face value, not that inverse type of crap that we did to justify a rate cut, because right now the market's already written off a March cut, unfortunately. But if we get some good data, we could essentially kind of move higher. In addition to that, S&P Global Manufacturing is also coming out at 845. Current forecast for that is 51.2. So both S&P and ISM are anticipating some level of contraction. On Tuesday, we don't really have that much. Wednesday, we just have ADP employment. So that is the monthly. Then on Thursday, we have challenger job cuts, and we've seen that be able to move the market significantly. So we have that, initial jobless claims, and then Friday, non-farm payroll, retail sales, and unemployment. So that is going to be a very fun day. Aside from that, companies unveiling their earnings, we actually do have a lot of big companies, nothing that will kind of directly impact the broader market, but a lot of these companies will give some level of insight to how consumers are. And of course, there's going to be a big correlation between how consumers are, if they're out there spending the money and so forth, and Opendoor, right? So if you think about it, Target, Costco, many other names listed here are going to really indirectly impact Opendoor. So let me know your general thoughts on that in the comments below. Potentially, we could be getting some new analyst ratings. I've kind of complained about this over the last couple of videos on how they're slowly coming in. Still very hesitant, but at least they're giving like $6 price targets, $8 price targets. So if we do get a couple more kind of larger firms or A firms, then in theory we could see Opendoor really move higher because of that. And again, if you think about Opendoor's earnings, it was home run. So logically you would assume analysts would be bullish on it. Going into this upcoming week though, so shorts did return 1.5 million shares on Friday. So they kind of did feel the pinch a little bit. 16.57% of the free float is being shorted. So that's what we're going into this upcoming week with. Still see some sketchiness though. There is more shares being shorted than on loan. So 136.06 million shares overall being shorted. Shares on loan being 95.9. That shouldn't happen. So possibly shorts might be continuing to return going into this upcoming week. But again, I think it's going to be largely dependent on a lot of the data points. But aside from that though, from a bull standpoint, you see a consensus for it to be roughly around 550 to 6. Bears are anticipating for it to be sub kind of between 450 and 5. So there definitely is a lot more upside based on all that. This is the open interest from Friday. So with it closing exactly at 542, that does mean that the $5 and below strike prices are considered in the money. So we have 23,000 at the 5, 9,000 at the 450. You can kind of see a couple of transactions that was done after hours on Friday on the dark pool. So that could be market makers covering some options, but not enough to cover them all. So in theory, could see a nice little pop higher on Monday, as market makers will have to cover all of those options. So a little bit of a gamma squeeze, so definitely good stuff for that. A couple of key points to watch for though. With it at 542, it is trading between this these 2 points right here, so right below this R1. So 545, that's going to be that key level to really get over early on in the week, and possibly all those options that need to be covered could be that gentle push that Opendoor needs to really get above it. But again, it's going to come down to the data. 495 is going to be the next strong support, and then 577 is going to be the next strong target. So for at least Monday and Tuesday, just watch for it to stay above that 545. Aside from all of that fun stuff on the actual chart itself, like I said, this last week it definitely outperformed the broader market, but this 50-day moving average, and generally that is a very big deal for Opendoor, and typically is a signal for shorts to double and triple down, as what we saw back in January when it did break above that blue line right there. So right now that 50-day moving average is sitting at 572. So just kind of watch for that. This right here, this 200-day moving average and also 10, that's going to act as pretty much the last line of defense. That's going to be extremely strong support. So the 10 is sitting at 487, 200-day moving average is 487.1. So ultimately that's going to be a very strong support level. I don't anticipate that to be touched unless, let's say, some massive escalation does occur as well between Iran and the States. So there's some things I kind of see floating around right now. Nothing that, in my opinion, is going to cause mass panic. So again, there's that, but still, you never know. A lot of things could happen over the weekend, unfortunately. But aside from that, like I said, it's going to be either one of these 2 points that we do touch or potentially bounce off of. And maybe if we get some new analyst ratings, that also could be a nice gentle push that Opendoor will need to get above that 50-day moving average. Looking at the market position though, it's kind of looks like both sides, willing buyers and sellers, have all kind of taken a step back. So you can kind of see right here, it's actually gone down quite significantly. So that does kind of signal as well that there's going to be some volatility. So again, don't be surprised if you see some pretty crazy swings for Opendoor, but a lot of willing buyers are kind of wanting to get in at around that 502, a lot of sellers around that 580, and conveniently that's very close to that 50-day moving average. So like I said, a lot of volatility, nothing really coming out over the weekend. So nothing coming out from 𝗪𝗧, no speculative topics, no articles really coming out about Opendoor. So it is merely going to be at the mercy of the broader market. So let me know your thoughts. Are you a buyer? Have you been buying? What's your kind of general thoughts? And did you buy the dip when it went down to 426? So for those individuals that did buy there, you could have made some pretty good money. And it's kind of funny because I actually look at some of the comments. I know I don't always respond all the time, but when it was here, I did say, you never know, when there's mass panic, buying a long call, that's how you can make some very, very serious money. And there was a handful of individuals saying, don't listen to this guy, don't buy a call option. So technically, if you would have just bought the common stock from the bottom to where we are now, that's a 21.93% upside. Depending on the strike price and expiry date that you did pick, you could have made easily, I would assume, about maybe 100, 150% easily. So again, you do whatever floats your boat. I'm not here to get you to buy nor sell, but sometimes it's the thing to do. So let me know your viewpoint on that. One final thing, pop over to my Patreon if you're looking for some solid buy signals on stocks, options, crypto. Despite what's been happening in the broader market, many of my signals have been on point. Even on Friday when everything was selling off, hit a 44%er. So worthwhile to kind of pop over there and check that out. Link in the description below and also the comments. With all that, appreciate all of you watching.